directly to the gas station?
Yeah, it's like a mile down
No, shit, dude, watch where you're going. Oh my gosh, are you okay?
I don't know.
Okay, let me get some help. Help, somebody. Hey, excuse me, sir, excuse me.
It's me, the police.
Oh, thanks.
Oh my God! Did you do this?
I swear I did. I don't know.
Look at me in my flashlight, boy.
Somebody was
Are
walking.
you a criminal?
Somebody was walking this way.
This poor man was an eyewitness to this gruesome murder. He was just heading back from work, but next thing he knows, he is put under immense pressure to remember, at night and after a very tiring day, every little detail he witnessed in just a few seconds. Some may even suspect him of being the murderer. The tradition of eyewitness testimony goes back to the Code of Hammurabi in 1754 BC. It states that witnesses can be key pieces of evidence, alongside of other evidence like physical evidence and documents. It also makes clear a distinction between eyewitnesses and character witnesses, with the former being qualified to speak on how an event transpired, while the latter can attest to the character and reputation of the parties. Even more relatable to the American legal tradition is the Magna Carta. Adopted in 1215 as an agreement between King John of England and his barons, Clause 28 of it states that no bailiff is henceforth to put any man on his open law or on oath, simply by virtue of his spoken word, without reliable witnesses being produced for the same. Philosophers throughout time have been mixed on the role of testimony in general, but most have a positive view of it. St. Augustine stated in his Confessions that unless we believed what we were told, we would do nothing at all in this life. John Locke took a more pragmatic view of memory and testimony, invoking the principle of proportionality compared to the evidence known to be true and the probability of what the witness says can be true. Building off of that, Hume believes the manner in which a witness delivers a statement is important, whether it was with hesitation or with too violent of asseveration. Aristotle, and indeed many in the Middle Ages, take a more critical view of testimony, believing that while sensation and observation are a key foundation of knowledge, an eyewitness cannot explain why something is the way it is, only that it exists that way, and therefore relied on theoretical tests of logic. Today, eyewitness testimony is one of the most compelling forms of evidence. In the United States, over 20% of cases have eyewitness testimony as one of the leading pieces of evidence. Supreme Court Justice William Brennan has stated once that there is almost nothing more convincing than a live human being who takes the stand, points a finger at the defendant, and says, "That's the one." However, it is also one of the most fraudulent forms of evidence, and is subject to the flaws of the human condition. Miranda exceptions, exclusionary rule exceptions, and other rules apply in order to counteract the sway of an eyewitness's testimony. For example, evidence obtained illegally would typically implicate the exclusionary rule, but can be used in order to impeach a witness. Eyewitness testimony is extremely important for the legal system and justice as a whole, but how reliable is the memory of eyewitnesses regardless of how trustworthy and genuine they are?
Thank you, Jack. In 2001, Daniel Shatner published The 7 Sins of Memory. These sins are the major drawbacks of human memory. They are often categorized based on omission, forgetting, or commission, misremembering. The 3 sins associated with omission are transience, absent-mindedness, and blocking. The remaining 4, misattribution, suggestibility, bias, and persistence, are sins of commission. These sins distort memories. As you would expect, the sins of omission impede the credibility of eyewitness testimony. You can't accurately depict an event you don't remember. However, we will focus on the sins of commission, specifically misattribution and suggestibility. Merriam-Webster cites that to misattribute is to incorrectly indicate the cause, origin, or creator of something. The American Psychological Association defined suggestibility as an inclination to readily and uncritically adopt the ideas, beliefs, attitudes, or actions of others. So, how are these sins, and how do they influence eyewitness testimony? Misattribution is a form of misremembering. Believed to be a product of the evolution of the human mind, misattribution is attributed to the extreme cost of remembering minute details. As opposed to memorizing every, often minuscule and negligible detail, humans have developed memory for gist, or main ideas, only encoding specific details when aroused or on high alert. Although there are obviously benefits to memory for gist, it presents challenges to recollection. Misattribution commonly results in false recognition. Cognitive psychologists have studied false recognition for decades, and in 1995, Roediger and McDermott conducted a study yielding extremely high rates of the phenomenon. Now known as the Diess-Roediger-McDermott, or DRM, paradigm, participants were presented with a list of words related to a lure word that was not included in the list. When asked if the lure word was present in the original word list, many participants incorrectly responded, yes. In some cases, the false recognition of the lure words was indistinguishable from the true recognition rates of the studied words. Psychologists proposed two causes for false recognition: implicit associative responses and semantic overlap. The implicit associative responses argument says that participants may have generated these lure words on their own while studying the set of related words, and then obviously incorrectly recalled studying it. The semantic overlap argument believes that participants develop general ideas of the words, remembering the theme of the words more than the individual ones themselves. Upon being asked about the related lure word, participants realized it was related to the set of words, and then falsely remembered studying it. False recognition factors into the devaluation of eyewitness testimony. In 1995, after the tragic bombing of an Oklahoma City office building, law enforcement officers searched for two suspects. We will call them A and B. A was eventually convicted, while B was wrongly believed to be with A. When an eyewitness was presented with a sketch of B and asked if he was involved with the crime, he mistakenly said yes. This faulty eyewitness testimony resulted in needless confusion and wasted effort, and occurred because the witness misattributed his memory. He had truly seen someone that looked like B, but it was the day after the bombing, not the day of. The eyewitness testimony had shown that someone similar to B was present, and falsely remembered him being involved in the bombing when he truly wasn't there. Suggestibility is another form of misremembering. Most studies of and knowledge about suggestibility stem from the misinformation effect, when original memories are altered due to misleading information. The misinformation effect is an example of retroactive interference, when new information inhibits the recollection and retrieval of old information. Throughout the 1990s, psychologists conducted a plethora of experiments on suggestibility and the misinformation effect. Many found that even fully fake traumatic experiences could be planted into people's minds. When prompted, participants recall these fake memories both confidently and vividly. The misinformation effect, fueling the sin of suggestibility, is influenced by multiple factors. Passage of time, mental state, and age are all factors that impact the likelihood of the misinformation effect. Intuitively, as the amount of time since an event increases, the chances of misremembering also increase. Age has a parabolic effect on the chances of misremembering. Younger children and older adults are most susceptible to the misinformation effect. Suggestibility plays a major role in discrediting eyewitness testimony. Interviewer bias, including leading questions, can result in the misinformation effect in eyewitnesses. In 1999, a study found that interviewer bias produced false memories in 60% of participants. This study separated children into groups, with only one group attending a birthday party. Interviewers were instructed to ask children about what they experienced. As interviewers questioned children, the majority of whom recalled a birthday party, they began wording their questions to align with the expectation that all of the children experienced a birthday party. When the interviewers began questioning the last group, none of whom had attended the birthday party, misinformation rates soared. Despite not attending the birthday party, 60% of children in this final group recalled attending it. Children are among the most susceptible to suggestibility, and the interviewers unintentionally crafted leading questions, suggesting that their interviewees attended an event that they did not. When questioned with these biased questions, children reported false memories at ridiculous rates. Interviewer bias exacerbates suggestibility, and the need for impartial interviews is crucial. However, assuming all interviews are completely unbiased and neutral, suggestibility still poses threats to eyewitness credibility. Studies have shown that we can, and often do, alter our memories every time we access them. Every time we recall an item, we subconsciously edit it. This process can deteriorate the accuracy and clarity of memories. Assuming a fully impartial interview, eyewitnesses can have faulty memories and misremember key details. Adding the possibility of a biased interview Suggestibility poses a major threat to the reliability of eyewitness testimony.
Thank you, Henry, for that explanation of memory and forgetting. Now, how do we take memory and forgetting and apply it to real-life scenarios? Maddie and I will discuss now some actual cases of conflicting eyewitness testimony just to get a sense of how inconsistent memory may be. A serial killer that has captured public imagination for over a century is Jack the Ripper. In the fall of 1888, he is canonically presumed to have killed 5 women in the East London district of Whitechapel. Despite numerous eyewitnesses claiming to have seen Jack the Ripper or something supposing him, in several pieces of physical evidence, his identity has never been conclusively proved. Here's a chart of most of the eyewitnesses that have claimed to have seen Jack the Ripper. Notice that the height values range from 5'2" to 5'9", that the ages range from 30 to 40 plus. However, some details are very similar, like the clothing, where most describe some sort of hat and jacket, and facial hair, where all describe a mustache. While we all perhaps have seen a 45-year-old who looks 30 and a 30-year-old who looks 45, these differences in testimony could implicate very different people. Many of these people were interviewed only days after seeing the suspect they believed to be Jack the Ripper. However, there is no telling how good their memory was so close to the event, or whether they were sensationalizing their story to sell it to investigators. Similarly to Jack the Ripper, and more recently, the Zodiac Killer is another unidentified serial killer that terrorized the San Francisco area in the late 60s and early 70s. In total, he is confirmed to have killed 5 people, but claimed to have killed 37. Indeed, there are many eyewitnesses that attest to seeing the Zodiac, as he styled himself, including the survivors of his attacks themselves. These attestments to the Zodiac Killer from survivors and a police officer are quite similar and were told only hours after their witness. Discrepancies in details could be chalked up to lapses in memory or lack of wisdom of physical judgment, even though it is likely they are talking about the same person. The eyewitnesses of the Zodiac show how different people can arrive at such variance in testimony.
As Jack and Henry already discussed, eyewitness testimony is untrustworthy at best. Of course, some people can lie about who they saw commit a crime for personal revenge or deflection of their own crimes, but most of the time, these errors are entirely innocent. In a 2015 study, participants were shown a clip of a crime featuring a perpetrator and an innocent bystander, and asked who committed the crime a week later. When the young adult co-witness blamed an innocent bystander, just over 40% of the participants did the same. However, less than 8% of those who were not influenced or influenced by an elderly co-witness blamed the bystander. This suggests that memories can be influenced by others, which can be damaging to eyewitness testimony. Other factors such as the presence of weapons, racial disparity between the witness and suspect, lack of distinct characteristics on the perpetrator, presence of a disguise, or lineups may increase the chances of identification error. Due to the crucial nature of such evidence in court, a false account can not only convict innocent individuals, but let violent criminals stay on the streets. According to the Innocence Project, at least 4.1% of people on death row are innocent, most of which were convicted at least in part by eyewitness testimony. The real-life cases of false convictions, such as that of Scott Minton, are both heartbreaking and infuriating. As noted by the Innocence Project, 20-year-old Scott Minton was convicted of robbing, shooting, and sexually assaulting a woman in her home in 1993. Despite not originally being picked out of a lineup by the victim and having a solid alibi, police pressed Mr. Minton. In fact, he had physical proof of being at an auto parts store during the time of the crime via receipts. Because he could not read, Mr. Minton was already at a disadvantage as he was forced to sign a waiver that he did not fully understand. A few days later, the victim picked Mr. Minton out of a lineup and he was coerced to confess to the police. After pleading for his innocence in court, he was sentenced to 76 years in prison for his alleged crimes. It wasn't until January of 2025 that he was exonerated from these charges. In countless other cases, eyewitness testimony was used to wrongfully convict innocent people. Ronald Cotton was wrongfully convicted of burglary and 2 sexual assaults in 1984 and served 10 and a half years of his life sentence in prison before being exonerated due to DNA evidence. The only evidence against Mr. Cotton was a flashlight in his home resembling one owned by the victim, his shoe print matching the one at the crime scene, and most damningly, the flawed eyewitness testimony accusing him. In 2009, 60 Minutes covered this case and showcased interviews from both Ronald Cotton and one of the victims. 22-year-old Jennifer Thompson explained how she picked Ronald Cotton out of a photo lineup of potential suspects after studying their faces for 5 minutes. After she picked Mr. Cotton, she was positive that she chose the right suspect. Following the photo lineup, there was a physical lineup in which Jennifer chose Mr. Cotton again, leaving no doubt in her mind that he was her rapist. With Mr. Cotton working at a restaurant close by, having a previous sexual assault allegation against him, and a faulty alibi, it seemed plausible for him to commit this crime. In the 60 Minutes interview, Mr. Cotton claimed that the accusation, quote, felt like someone was pushing a knife through me. After just 40 minutes of deliberation, the jury convicted 22-year-old Ronald Cotton, mainly off of Jennifer's testimony. Interestingly enough, when Mr. Cotton was in prison, he saw a new inmate that resembled the rendering of the perpetrator and asked if he could do anything, if he had anything to do with the crime, especially because he was convicted of rape. This new inmate was convicted of rape. Although he denied any involvement in Jennifer's rape, he admitted to a different inmate that he did indeed commit this crime. Mr. Cotton even resembled the new inmate, called Bobby Poole, so much that staff started calling Mr. Cotton Mr. Poole. Mr. Cotton pressed to test for DNA evidence in this case after watching the O.J. Simpson trial. Investigators were able to find tiny bit of leftover DNA from the crime and were able to match it to the new inmate, Bobby Poole, and not Mr. Cotton. If Mr. Cotton didn't stand up for himself and ask the right questions, he might still be in prison today. Interestingly, Jennifer Thompson had a hard time accepting the news that Bobby Poole was her real rapist. When she looks back at the memories of her rape almost 11 years prior, she could not see anyone but Mr. Cotton's face, since she had already believed for all those years that he was guilty. She truly changed her memory due to the issues brought about by lineups. So how do we get around this? Since eyewitness testimony is crucial to convicting criminals, eliminating it in court would be detrimental. Allowing experts on eyewitness testimony to testify in court may help the jury make more informed decisions about the legitimacy of the eyewitness testimony at hand. Due to the courts claiming that experimental findings on eyewitness testimony do not apply to the courtroom, experts on the matter are not allowed to testify in court. As science advances, it is possible that experts on eyewitness testimony can be used to limit wrongful convictions. Other technological advances, such as the improvement of surveillance cameras, quality, and prevalence, and more accurate lie detectors may also improve the chances of catching the correct perpetrator.
From the grave speaks Barras after death on a pedestal so high, says a memory's a mirror where the truth goes to die. Then Ellie steps in, night cold as steel, says I remember so the world can feel. Now Setha walks slow, haunted by pain, a ghost in her home, a blood-stained name. Postmodernists flow in a post-colonialist age, and the world is your oyster, but it's Toni Morrison's stage.